Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and behind me is my new to me 5.4 liter 2-valve swapped 1999 Mustang GT. Woo! In this video, I'm gonna be going over all of the mods that are done to this car because I'm about to send it in to get some more goodies and to fix a little electrical gremlin that I am currently facing. Figured this video should help some of you guys out if you're wondering what is actually done to this car, what's under the engine bay, and how you can potentially 5.4 swap your new Edge Mustang. So if you enjoyed the video and want us to update with any and all of the content on the channel, whether it be new Edge Mustangs or S550s, specifically GT350s, make sure you guys drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and also turn on those post notifications. Let's go ahead and get into it. Now, this is gonna be a garage style video because currently I'm not really trying to drive the car. I can limp it around. I will put a sound clip of what this car does sound like because it sounds pretty nasty, I'm not gonna lie, but I do need to go ahead and fix some electrical gremlins. Now, we're gonna go over the performance mods. I'm not really gonna talk about the exterior mods because let's be honest, nobody really cares about that, and we're all trying to figure out how we can push more horsepower out of a new Edge Mustang. So first off, as you guys can see here, we do have a P1SC Procharger. This is gonna be an Anderson's power pipe connected to the system, and this is on a 3-inch pulley. Now, this entire setup is 8-ribbed, so that's gonna be very helpful when combating belt slip. Now, I had a 4.6 liter 2-valve before I actually picked up this car that was on the standard 6-rib setup, and I'd only encountered belt slip when I was running the standard Vortec pulleys and running a tighter belt. Now, once I went ahead and swapped out to a GripTech pulley, all that went away, and the maximum amount of boost that I saw in that car was 17 PSI, and that was on a stock bottom end 4.6 liter 2-valve car. Now, I know that sounds kind of insane. I mean, 17 pounds on a 4.6 liter 2-valve stock bottom end. I personally didn't care. I was running it and it lasted, and the car is still running to this day with the new owner. Now, this car actually does have a 15% Innovators West overdrive pulley on it as well. So I'm assuming with the 8-rib setup, the 3-inch pulley, and the overdrive, this car is making anywhere between 13 to 16 pounds of boost. And with the motor setup, we'll put it around that 650 horsepower range. At least that's what the owner told me. I will be getting hard dyno numbers on this car when I actually take it to my guy, but so far, for the short moment I did drive it, it makes a hell of a lot of torque, which I will go ahead and explain why. We're gonna talk about the motor setup. All right, so looking at the engine bay, this is obviously not a 4.6 liter 2-valve. This is a 5.4 liter 2-valve that has been completely, and I mean completely, gone through. I'm gonna go over the top end, then I'm gonna go over the bottom end, and we're gonna talk about the compression ratio because this is actually a pretty interesting setup. Now, the top end, this is gonna be 05 2-valve heads. These are ported 05 2-valve heads. Now, as you guys can also see here, we are rocking the Vic Jr Intake manifold, and we do have the 60-61 throttle body and pretty much intake plenum system here. The intake manifold as well as the throttle body and plenum system is going to be ported as well. So we have the ported PI heads, we have the ported intake manifold itself, and we also do have the ported throttle body and plenum system. Now, this is a 75mm throttle body on here as well, so this is going to be pushing out a lot of air, a lot of CFM, and it's going to take advantage of a bigger head unit, which I will be upgrading in the future. Now, this car does have cams as well. Again, like I said, I will be putting a sound clip of what this does sound like. This thing is bumping. Woo! This has some bullet cams. I don't know the exact spec of the cams because I was not the one that installed the cams, but just from driving it around, even with the 410 gears, they are some serious cams. The car likes to buck anytime it's under 1,000 RPM, so that lets you know the type of setup this really is. Now, this does have a forged 5.4 crankshaft as well, and we are rocking some Manley rods and some pistons, and these are going to be 11-to-1 compression pistons. That's why this car does make a considerable amount of power, running not that much amount of boost. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to be saying 11-to-1 compression, you're nuts. This car is only ran on E85. This is actually an NA setup before the Procharger was put on it. The setup itself has about 5,000 miles on it as far as the motor goes, and the Procharger literally was just put on about 500 miles ago. So it's a relatively new setup. I'm gonna get used to it, and then when I am used to it, I am planning on upgrading the Procharger head unit to something that can go ahead and feed this motor some more air, because theoretically, the P1SC really isn't big enough for this type of setup. I mean, we do have a much larger stroke. We are running, you know, pretty much a heads cam combo and a forged bottom end that can support, theoretically, on this setup, 1,000 horsepower. So this P1SC is definitely, you know, it's struggling a little bit, I ain't gonna lie. I haven't even really got on the car yet, but I can just tell just from the motor and just the CFM this does put out, because I had a Vortec V1S trim, which is kind of similar to the P1SC. If I had the Vortec on this car, it'd probably make around the same horsepower, but if I was to put a D1SC on this, or let's say a YSI on this, we're talking about 700 horsepower, 750, without even trying. Now obviously this is going to be an intercooled system. This car sounds really good with the Procharger. Honestly, it does sound louder than my V1S trim. As you guys can see down here, it does have the Tial 50mm blow-off valve, which is incredibly loud. Probably one of the best blow-off valves on the market in my personal opinion for a centrifugal supercharged car. It sounds amazing. If you're not really into the obnoxious blow-off valve noise, you probably don't want to go with something like that, because you're gonna hear like 24/7. But with a car like this, the heads, cam, blow-off valve, I mean, it's really loud, man. You honestly can't hear yourself think in the car. Radio, chalk, forget it. It's useless. When I was driving down the highway before I ran into the electrical issue or whatever happened, it was incredibly loud. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't even hear Siri give me directions. So there you go. Now obviously with the Vic Jr Intake, we do have some aftermarket fuel rails. These look like they are actually some MMR fuel rails. This actually does have some MMR parts in here. It has complete new timing set. It has a Cobra oil pump in here as well. So that's what those do look like. The spark plugs here, they are some Brave X spark plugs. I don't really like those. I'm going to be doing pretty much the OEM setup like I had on my other car, just the Motorcraft spark plugs. And I'm going to be doing pretty much, you know, all the maintenance items when, you know, it's time to go ahead and do that, which would be in pretty much, hopefully, honestly, next week when this car is running. Well, it runs, but I can't really go over 2,000 RPM without it starting to buck and cut. It could be an AFR issue, could be an electrical issue, but I'm definitely going to go ahead and get that situated ASAP. Now inside the car, I'm going to go ahead and talk about pretty much the necessities that should be talked about in a mods video: the clutch, the shifter, things like that. I'm not going to go really into detail with the type of seats I have in here. You guys can kind of tell it has 11 to 14 Mustang seats. I mean, they're okay, but I will say this: it does actually sit lower than the stock Mustang seats that come in the new Edges. So if you do have a 4-inch cowl hood like I do, and you're not really tall, you're going to be running into some serious issues. So you definitely need to go ahead and think about that if you are thinking about swapping out the seats. If you're not at least 5'10", honestly, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just trying to save yourself a lot of headaches. I don't recommend swapping out the seats and getting a cowl hood. You 100% will not be able to see over the hood, and that's obviously going to be a road hazard. Now as far as the clutch goes, this does have a McLeod clutch. Now this actually does have the McLeod Super Street clutch in the car right now. This is a very, and I mean a very heavy clutch. This is actually the same clutch that I had in my white new Edge, the 2-valve car, except this one is rated for 650 wheel horsepower or so, and the one I had in the white car was good to 500. Now you guys might be wondering, why is there a clutch that's rated for literally the amount of horsepower the car is putting down right now? Let me go ahead and explain that, because it does make sense. This car is still a 5-speed transmission. It has the Tremec 3650 in here. I do have a spare that I'm going to be getting built. If I decide not to go ahead and get that built, obviously I'm going to put a T56 transmission in here. I like the 5-speed, believe it or not. I have the 3160 in my GT50, and I like the 5 speeds on this car. The gearing with the 5 speeds, when you gear it properly, is actually pretty damn effective, especially if you take the car out to roll nights. It's not bad. Like with this setup, I know for a fact I'd be able to do like probably 60 to 120 legitimately in one gear with 355 gears, with the RPM set to literally probably just to 6,500, which obviously we could do that with the heads cam combo. So that's something that I'm really excited for. It has very short throws, goes in smooth to all the gears. Obviously with these 3650s, you kind of have to be a little bit finicky with that reverse, but it's not that big of a deal. It does have the Steeda TRI-AX short throw, which is garbage in my opinion. I'm gonna be swapping this out for the MGW. Steeda TRI-AX is, I don't like those at all. For me personally, they're mechanical, but it's not a good mechanical. The MGW, the race that I had in the white New Edge, amazing. So this is gonna get thrown out literally immediately. But as far as everything else goes in here, everything is pretty much standard. It has some gauges in here, which I don't really like the gauges in here. It's just some cheap auto meter gauges. I'm gonna put the AAM wideband and the AAM boost gauge. These aren't even hooked up, so you know, it just kind of helps me out. I'm just gonna swap all this out and get some quality parts under here because I'm not a fan of this junk that's in there. It's just not junk, but y'all know what I mean. It's really not good. Back seats are intact. Probably gonna take these out, put a rear seat delete, because I'm not having people in this car at all. Passenger seat obviously is intact for right now. This is probably gonna be out, and I'm probably gonna have a different seat as far as the driver's goes. I'm probably gonna put maybe like a Kirky and then get the harness bar because this is gonna be a race car. But other than that, that's pretty much the interior. Let me know what you guys think. It's actually not in bad condition, and this car has like 180k miles on the body, so surprisingly, you know, it's not bad. Now I'm gonna talk about the fuel system that's in the car right now, because that's obviously very important. That's probably the second most important thing next to the motor setup, or you can honestly say it's probably the most important thing, because theoretically if you have a good fuel system, you can push more power on the stock bottom end. So let's go ahead and get into that. All right, so obviously for the fuel system, this is a return style fuel system. As far as injectors goes, it does have the Dietzwerks 1000cc injectors. I'm not really a huge fan of Dietzwerks. I haven't gotten the car, but I am gonna swap those out to ID 1050Xs. I had Dietzwerks on my FRS, no issues, but for a car like this, I'd rather rock the ID 1050Xs. The fuel system, obviously you can't really see it because it's in the, you know, underneath everything in the trunk, but it does have a single Holley fuel pump, which I'm kind of indifferent about. I believe is the 200 GPH fuel pump. Now that could be the issue I'm having right now, because the car will crank, but once it gets over 2k RPM, it starts to buck and start like there's an AFR or fuel issue or electrical issue. So if it is the fuel system, best believe that pump is getting taken out, and I'm putting a 4 Innovations dual pump with the 465s and the 1050Xs in here. That's what I was gonna do with the white car, and that's probably what I'm gonna do with this car as well. Single pump setups, I know they work. The car is really not raking that much power. 650, that's a decent amount for a New Edge, but I know those single, you know, return style pumps can handle 650 on E. But once I do upgrade the head unit and do stuff like that, I'm gonna feel personally more comfortable with a dual pump from 4, because at least I know exactly what's going on. So that's gonna get swapped out when I do go ahead and upgrade the head unit, which I'm not too sure if I'm gonna do a D1SC or a little bit larger. A D1SC would make a pretty damn good amount of power and have a good power curve, because that's what's important on a car like this that's light and makes a lot of torque. So we'll see how we act up with that, but hopefully the fuel pump is good. If not, I'm just literally gonna swap out the fuel pump for a new one. But when I am ready to upgrade, we're gonna go ahead and do a return style fuel system with the dual pumps, potentially triple with the 4 system, because that's just the right way to do it in my personal opinion. And that's pretty much it as far as the performance mods goes. The car has an 8.8 rear end with 410 gears, which I'm gonna be swapping out for 355s. It's just gonna be a little bit better with the 3650 in my personal opinion. Just easier to drive around town, better for roll nights, and also theoretically would be better for the strip, at least for me, because I personally don't like the way 410s drive on any car. But if you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, turn those post notifications. These new cars, they're fun. These old cars, they hit different, man. I'm not gonna lie, because being in a new Edge, it's like that raw feeling. They give you some issues, but it's just nice being in a car that chops. You really can't hear anything that's going on outside, and it's a nice experience. It really is. So can't wait to get this thing running 100% and share the experience with y'all. Catch you guys in the next one. Deuces.